This episode of the Multiracialverse podcast is brought to you by Evitan Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Evitan represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Evitan family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Evitan_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Evitan Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch.
Yeah, there's a lot of clear strengths that you even see in research. Like one for mixed race kids, it's like cognitive flexibility, just being able to solve a problem from multiple angles because they're exposed to different cultures, different groups of people that kind of do things in a different way. And because they're able to, if you think about the very basic level of a mixed race kid probably learning to interact with one side of the family and talk and joke and whatever this way. And then when they go to this side of the family, they have to interact a different way. They're already switching in their minds, like how to perceive the world, how to, just understand things. So then when it comes to problem solving, they can actually be more creative. They have more, cognitive flexibility in that regard.
Welcome to the Multiracialverse podcast, episode 10. I am your host, Antonio Fernandez. Today I'm thrilled to have our guest, Dr. Jenn Noble, a psychologist, educator, and advocate for marginalized communities and the parents navigating their teens through them. Dr. Jenn is deeply passionate about teen mental health and identity development, aiming to dismantle barriers like poverty, stigma, and discrimination. Drawing from her personal experiences as a mixed-race individual and her experience connecting with her immigrant mother, our guest emphasizes the importance of open communication and understanding within families. In today's episode, we delve into vital discussions about how to approach conversations on culture and race with children, exploring the right timing, potential consequences of avoidance, and the significance of embracing cultural identities. Our guest brings invaluable insights on empowering youth and families to navigate through multi-layered barriers with strength and resilience. Join us as we embark on a journey to empower parents and teens, fostering understanding, acceptance, and growth in a diverse and ever-changing world. Let's dive into episode 10 of the Multiracialverse podcast. Welcome to the Multiracialverse, Dr. Jenn. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I've been following you for a bit, listening to the podcast you've been on, and I am just thrilled about the work that you're doing, and would love to, get to share some of that with our audience. So let's start with your background and a little bit about your journey as a multiracial person.
Yeah, well, I am Sri Lankan, Tamil, and African American. And when you say journey, I mean, what do you want to know specifically so I don't say too much?
Maybe where you were born, what it was, a little bit about what it was like growing up. Was there a balance of those different cultures, in your household? How did you identify, maybe even?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was born in Southern California. I was born in Santa Monica. So kind of born and raised here in California. And as far as like identity growing up, I always say that I always knew who I was. I was aware that I had a Sri Lankan parent, an African American parent. They made it very, they made a point. Well, I don't know if they made a point or they just exposed me to culture just because it was important to them. And so I kind of always knew, okay, my parent is from here, my other parent is from here. But I think what was interesting as far as identity is that I sort of, growing up, had to realize how the world saw me. So they didn't always see what I knew myself to be. So it was a very interesting contrast to be like, that's how you see me. Okay. So yeah, that was more about my identity. I always say yeah, it's just that it was more like, okay, this, specifically the Sri Lankan side of me or the aspects of me, those are not readily seen by other people.
Sure.
So I kind of became aware of that, growing up.
May I ask if that was your mother or father's side?
My
And
mom. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and with that, did your household tend to? You said she was very adamant about making sure for whatever reasons for herself to share that culture. What did that look like in the household growing up?
I mean, I think it looked like everything. I mean, it's just the way that we ran the home, the foods that we would eat. I think even just something as small as like my mom not understanding Halloween and being like, what do you mean we have to find clothes for you to dress? What is this? Why are you coming home with a bucket of candy? Give that to me. That's going on the top of the fridge. I'm going to eat that. I'm like, hey, but that's what we do. And she's like, this holiday makes no sense. What's happening? So it was just kind of her living the way that she grew up and then just kind of building a home that way. And then I didn't know any different. So if I would go to anybody else's house, for example, I would just, as soon as I walk in, I'd take my shoes off. And
oh, wow, yeah.
friends would say, oh, you don't have to take your shoes off. And I would be like, what? Oh, does not everybody do this, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then as far as that culture inside of the home shaping that part of your identity, how did it look with the American culture that was all around you that you were growing up in? Say, for instance, you mentioned Halloween. Were there other instances of where you were possibly saying, hey, I want to do these things which are more American and maybe put the African Tamil side of myself, away for a little while? Were there instances where that came up?
Not really. It was more like I was growing up in, a predominantly American culture. My father's African American, so he understood a lot of American culture, but it was still different for him because he didn't grow up in California. So certain things that maybe I would do, and I grew up in a neighborhood that was very, suburban. So I didn't have the same like awareness of like city life. My dad grew up more in the city. You need to pay attention to that and pay attention to this. And my mom just, a lot of the practices that American kids were into, she just didn't understand or, didn't, it's not that she didn't understand it. She just was like, I don't agree with this. So, there were always those contrasts, but it's just a normal thing. I think of whatever I would bring home, we would just have to resolve that conflict. If it was maybe a sleepover or something, maybe my parents would be like, sleepover? Why do you? No, we don't allow that. But I'm like, all the kids do it. They're like, you have a home, you have food.
Oh, that's funny. So when did your first awareness of really looking at yourself as being multiracial, multicultural, when did that awareness happen? Was it through your teenage years or college?
Like I say, I think I was aware of it from very, very young. So even in elementary school, I remember meeting peers that, shared some aspect of heritage that I did. And we would talk about it like, oh, me too. I like this. I like that. But I think as far as incorporating it into my identity and maybe being more public about it, that would have been in high school. And high school is when I first had a peer in my class, and his older sister was 2 years ahead of him. They were both Sri Lankan. So that was the first time, in my schooling that I got to meet another Sri Lankan that wasn't a part of my family. And so really being able to talk about that on the high school campus was a different experience, because normally it was like, all right, I'll just be me. And if it comes up, I might talk about it. But then everything that I do Sri Lankan is with my family. And now we got to, with a stranger, quote unquote, I got things that we knew, that they were shared knowledge. And so that was one of the first times where I got to be more public about it. And then I think college, I definitely did a lot more, again, public interactions and joining more clubs. Like I was in like a South Asian Student Association and the Black Student Union and, those kind of things.
And during those times, because I've talked to a few guests about going to college, oftentimes there's those opportunities. It's, more open-minded. There's the different groups and clubs people can join. Did anybody ever question when you went to the South Asian club, or was it pretty open-minded?
What I always say is like South Asian culture, whether you were born in another country or even grew up that way, it's not a very confronting kind of culture. So they're going to watch from afar, maybe stare. So I think when I went, I was going with other friends that I already had. So they were South Asian. So I think if anybody thought anything, they didn't step over that line to say anything. So I wouldn't have known. There was no questions directly at me. I don't know if they would have gone to each other and been like, "Who's that? Why is she here?" But it was pretty. I would say it was open. There was no conflict. And actually, from one of those times going to one of those events is where I met one of my closest friends today. So it was just, it kind of gave her a moment, an excuse to kind of come up and talk to me. I was wearing a sari. And so from then it kind of started a friendship. So I think, in that regard, there was just an expectation like, okay, this is a club meeting or this is a club event. We're not really policing who comes and who doesn't.
Yeah.
So if this person is here, first of all, they're okay, fine. They're here at the event. And it seems like they're with that person. So there must be a reason. And then they must have figured it out on their own later. Yeah. Yeah,
that's great. And how did you identify? Because that's something, and maybe it'll come up a little later when we talk more about the work you do, but the way the nomenclature for our identification is evolving, really quickly. And one of the best things to do when meeting individuals is if that does come up, something about race or culture or, that identity piece is, making sure we ask what that person prefers as far as how to be identified. And did that change for you along your journey?
Oh, sure. I think, when I filled out certain forms, I think it changed a lot of times, multiple times over the years. So depending on like forms or who I was talking to, I might check off more than one box. I might just check one box. I might respond to people and just say, I'm African American or, but somewhere in there, I think I started listing both. I think the most common through line would be that I would have identified myself as an African American woman probably first, because I just, that's what everybody else saw. That was how I was treated. That's how, I was expected to interact in the world. So I definitely would say that often, but any excuse I had, I would assert the other thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in college, were you already looking to study psychology or? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how did that develop to kind of, to where you're at today with, you do have more of a focus on a particular group. And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to do psychology or be a psychologist. I think for a while I wanted to be a pediatrician, but then I realized maybe I have to do with blood and stuff like that. So I did study psychology in college, and somewhere in there is actually where I did an independent study with one of my professors. And I think it was supposed to be on adolescence or something, but I ended up looking up research that was focused on mixed race folks. And that was like really just blew my mind, where I was like, wow, other people are actually researching this group. Not only did I find research on individuals who were like Black and white, but then Asian and white. And I remember being really shocked when I found a couple of researchers that did studies on Black and Japanese.
Oh, wow.
And because I was very close, I was like, whoa, yeah. Black and Asian. So that really sparked off a strong interest. And so from then on, even in my search for graduate school, I knew I wanted to work with kids and teenagers. And that cultural piece was always an interesting, always a passion for me. So whether it was in my own research or in the grad schools that I chose, I was always looking to incorporate and understand how does culture mix with all of this psychology stuff I'm learning. So it kind of never went away from undergrad. And so I did my dissertation on mixed race identity and started working in nonprofits. So yeah.
That's beautiful. I think that is so important because I know that when I've gone out and tried to find a therapist, like one of my things is like, I'm mixed race. I want somebody who understands it, you know? Yeah. And there's some other factors in there too. But I think it's so important, and it's awesome that you had the intuition and you started doing that. And so thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
I'm fascinated by your practice. And I'm sure there's definitely a component, there's a baseline for human psychology, you know, and it varies based on, you know, little nuances. But let's talk about the work you do with the focus on mixed race. Do you work with multicultural too?
I think, you know, it ends up falling under there somewhere. But when I say mixed race, I think most people kind of know what that means. But every once in a while, it's someone that wants to talk about, hey, I have multiple cultures in my background. So I have, for example, in my private practice, I have more than a few clients who have either immigrant parents or they grew up in a different country than their parents, or, you know, maybe two parents of the same racial group, but two different ethnicities. So there's that crossover there. And I also work with parents who have adopted a child, so transracial adoptees. So there's a lot of crossover with those identity pieces. But and I guess almost if we think about it, a majority or a lot of individuals have, I always say there's like this American culture that, you know, even if somebody might be from Europe and they have a few things that they hold on to from that culture, but the American culture maybe thinks that might be weird. Like that's always smashing up against us so heavily, you know? Yes, exactly. Right.
Excellent. So let's just start with basics. What does X or Y mean in your practice when you're when somebody comes in and they're multiracial, and maybe they're, I don't know if specifically people come in and say, I have this conflict, like I'm these two different backgrounds, and it's, you know, making me feel in a way that I don't know what to do with it. What does it mean to you to be X or Y ethnicity? And I know that there are obviously federal, you know, categories that there are, but how do you work with teens and children to work on that piece and their identity?
Yeah, I think when, you know, teens or young adults come to me, they're not actually saying I have a conflict, I'm this and I'm that, and I don't know how to like be in the world. It's really more like I'm this and I'm that, or I'm this and this, but society is giving me a hard time in this way or this way. And so, you know, it's more about like, I want to learn how to deal with that or understand why they're giving me such a hard time. Every once in a while, I will come across, I'm thinking of two people that did say, okay, I'm this and I'm this, but I never got to learn about this. And so I do want to figure out how to incorporate that into my identity, because my parents kept that from me for so long. And I realized, you know, it's a big aspect about who I am, but I never got a chance to learn about it. that's a little bit different. I think it's less common. It's much more common to just have the people that are saying, I know who I am, but why is everybody, all getting their panties in a bunch over it? Like, what's the issue? So then we kind of talk more about, okay, how to build up a resilience or a strength that kind of pushes out those questions and those judgments so that they can feel strong within themselves, and just learning how to assert, this is who you are. Doesn't matter what people say, what people think, kind of strengthen that way. But most of the time, if we're talking about therapy, private practice, most of those people are coming for a whole different reason, much bigger reason, because they're looking for therapy. I have not yet met any mixed race person that comes to therapy for being mixed race. They come to therapy because I had stuff in my family. I had this happen. I'm, looking for a job. I'm experiencing depression. And then a little aspect of it is like, oh yeah, and also I'm mixed race, and like sometimes this comes up in this way, or I'm learning, like there's this unique thing about me that I also want to talk about. I think that's usually more how it comes up. So it's really a matter of when you say, how do I help, especially young people, deal with their identity? It's really just helping them dig into it a little bit and realize, okay, actually, you've always known who you are. Now let's give you the permission to, because people have stopped you from asserting who you are, but let's get that back. Let's get that power back.
That's what I love about reading the information on your website and the content that you put out. It's reclaiming this ownership of like, this has always been there and not, this is like an anomaly. And I think it's really, really a beautiful way to approach that. Because it's very, obviously, I have two young daughters, there's a lot in saying, and something that I've tried to already implement with what you shared is when you had this great piece of content that said, oh, stop saying I'm 50% this, 20% this, and start talking about I'm like 100% this, or not even percentage. It was more like I am, Mexican American, or I'm English and Mexican, so I love that so much. That was such an awesome piece of content. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very empowering for people when they see it. It's empowering for the mixed race person themselves. It's also empowering for parents, because parents often feel funny explaining their, children like, well, they're fourth this, and they can sort of, it just doesn't feel natural. So when they list what it is, everybody feels more confident, more empowered, less judged, less kind of scrutinized.
Yeah. And so when working with teens and children, do you work with them to possibly start conversations when it does come up with their parents around race and culture? Or do you also work with parents and say, hey, here's a good way to start to introduce, if your family, if you and your spouse or partner, whoever, are both passionate about your cultures, and want to make sure that you share those with your children, here's maybe the right ages and the right way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. It's much more of that. So I may help the child have conversations with their parents if they need to, but any teenager I work with, I'm definitely working with their parents as well. And so if it is an interracial couple and they haven't had discussions about race and culture and identity, then I would be encouraging and helping them to do that, helping them support and advocate for their mixed race teen. Because as long as we can get the parents on the side of the child, we just see resilience go up, confidence go up. This child is just already feeling like, well, my parents agree with me. Like, my parents know who I am, and my parents said I could be this and this, and that I can describe myself this way. So now I can walk onto my school campus and feel a lot more confident because I was told, yes, you're allowed to say it that way, So
yeah, I love that. Mm-hmm. Is there any particular, because we talk about the formative years being X, is there any time that you as an expert would recommend, let's talk to your children about, if this is something that you want to do with your children, this is a good age, or these are ages where, that self-esteem is developed around these different identity pieces. And that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I always say the youngest child can actually have a lot of great discussions about race. And parents think, oh no, maybe it's too young. But no, you can start bringing this stuff up as young as 3 years old. You just do it in an age-appropriate way. So the conversation you would have with a 13-year-old about being mixed race or racial identity, of course, is very different than the conversation you'd have with a 3-year-old. But the earlier, the better. And when you start at 3 and you have these mini conversations and you expose them to language about, race or melanin or skin color and all of those things, you have just set the stage for then when they're 10 and when they're 11 and when they're 16, you can have those deeper conversations because you would have been building on it all that time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what kind of techniques do you give the child or teen? And I love that these individuals are coming in and they already understand and own and are aware of who they are. This really, dynamic, complex individual from 2 backgrounds or 2 ethnicities or races. What are some of the techniques you pass on to them to help them navigate that with, say, for instance, like my friend, like when I grew up, I was somewhere and people would often use, like Mexican slang terms, and I would just run away. I didn't have any, mechanisms to say, hey, what do you do with teens and children or to have those conversations or in the safest way possible, I think, because there are going to be just, I guess, ignorant or bullies, but maybe with friends, because I think friends maybe just don't understand when you get too comfortable and then they just, throw out the microaggressions. So
yeah. I mean, how, helping a kid deal with microaggressions is hard because you can't really avoid them. But certainly that just goes back to this idea of like, helping them realize and helping them internalize, who you are. So let's figure out how to respond if someone does say something rather than being so like gut punched by these microaggressive statements, because usually that indicates that the kid is just not so sure themselves. They're kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe I am this and I'm that, but am I really? And then when that person says that little microaggression, they're like, oh, I knew it. I'm not doing it right, or I'm not good enough. So working with them to sort of really feel like, okay, wait, yeah, they are wrong and they don't get it. And they don't know me and they don't know my family. They don't know what I know. And so I am now going to, assert it on campus. So I think one of the ways that I've encouraged some of my teens to do this is like just with outerwear. Because sometimes, the word awkward is very, the kids don't want to be like awkward. Oh, it's awkward to just like have, you don't want to be like that person that's always starting arguments. But if you were to, on your backpack or on your laptop, you have a sticker that says blah, blah, pride, or you have a shirt that, I have a client that used to wear earrings that were very, culturally tied to a country that her parent was from. So she had a couple different pairs of these earrings that she purposefully wore because for her, it was just a way of saying, this is me connected to this country that my parent is from. And if you ask me about it, or if you say I shouldn't wear it, too bad. But like, if you ask me what they are, I'll tell you, I'll explain it. And then if your follow-up is like, oh, I didn't know you were that, you don't look this, then she could be like, oh, well, that's your problem. Like, I still am what I am, even though you just don't know about it. So it's like really helping them find a way to wear it on the outside so that they can feel the confidence of it on the campus.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And with that, what do you think is the detriment to individuals suppressing identity? I know for myself, I grew up in Wyoming, which is 99% white. It's pretty, and my dad took us there to assimilate us. And, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been involved in some resource groups that are Latinx based, Hispanic based, and kind of had a coming to terms with understanding that, like, I lived a life identity-wise looking like a Latinx male and took the things that come with that, Yeah. So what is the benefit to parents if they're like, oh, I don't want to do this because it'll put them in a position to be the other or separated. But when that is suppressed, it's got to cause definitely more issues that impact other things per se.
Yeah, I mean, if a parent is, if there is a parent that is saying, I'm going to raise my child to just be of the dominant culture and we're going to hide everything else that they are, that is definitely detrimental, because that kid is going to reach adolescence and realize, oh, wait, I have another parent who is this like minoritized identity. How come I don't know anything about that? How come I'm not connected to it? Mm-hmm. How come I don't like it or hate it or want to reject it? Wait a minute. Oh, if I've been rejecting that group all this time, does that mean I'm rejecting myself? And now what do I do? I mean, it leads to a whole spiral of questions. And it's not a protection at all for the child. I think if a parent does that, it's more of a protection for themselves, and not of the child, because the parent is protecting themselves from hard conversations, difficult moments, trying to learn the right words to say to your kid, helping a kid connect to their culture. And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with all of that. So, oh, you're just this. Yeah, go be that. Don't worry about anything else, and it just backfires, unfortunately. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I think you kind of answered it with that, is that there's such probably a variance of conversations you could, if a child or a teen comes to you and says, hey, I want to know more about my culture, but my parents aren't, I don't know if they're open to that. You can only give them the tools, and then obviously at one point that comes up against, the parents' will. And if they don't want to, then ultimately the child, you have to kind of pivot and give them tools to live with that, so that maybe they're suppressing in their household, but not elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, if it's an adolescent, they're going to push back at some point at home as well anyway. So if there is, I mean, honestly, it really is a challenge to the parent, because the kid, I think it's very interesting, because I'm thinking of a couple families where, and they're not always families that I've worked with, just other families that I've known, where the parent really just wanted to like, look, don't worry about my culture, just, go be American or whatever. But then they are challenged by that child that comes back in adolescence and is almost demanding, like, I want to know about this. Like, what about this language? What about the history? What was it like growing up? And now the parent's like, oh, you're making me think about all these things I was trying to like forget because I thought it would be good for you. Mm-hmm. But now I realize, gosh, I could have been giving you this all along. And it can create a clash. And, like I said, it's an opportunity for a parent to say, all right, you want to go there? Let's go there together then.
Yeah.
Or it can drive a wedge where that kid is just like, I can't believe you don't even like your own culture and you didn't want to share with me. And now I kind of don't respect you as much. Some of those things can happen for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that, do you feel that the teens or children you talk to, the impact of culture in general, like say, for instance, American culture, whatever it be, social media or other things, often has a bigger impact than, say, for instance, the identity piece of being from multiple cultures. And what I mean by that, to kind of clarify that question, is, somebody such as yourself, the Tamil culture that you were raised with in your household has caused some clashes with the way that, you said, I couldn't stay the night at people's houses, Mm-hmm. Do you see that more the culture piece causing, I guess, mental health issues or issues with children?
No, I mean, I don't think, I think there are larger things that happen that lead to mental health stuff. But if we were going to relate it to culture, it would have to be something like a kid is either mixed race or they're from some cultural background, and then they keep enduring this thing over and over and over again. Rejection, isolation, bullying, or whatever. And that itself, that's just ongoing bullying or ongoing rejection or ongoing isolation, then can lead to whatever the, outcome is. So I don't really think it's the culture clash itself. I think if the culture clash leads to some bigger event, I've certainly worked with families where, there's a lot of anti-Jewish hate that's been kind of popping up over the last, 5 to 10 years, like in big ways. And I've definitely worked with a couple families where they've either come downstairs to their home or the neighbor's home, probably because they thought it was the home of the family, where there's anti-Semitic statements spray painted. Those are big events. Mm-hmm. But what I mean is to actually have it result in a mental health thing. It's like, how do we handle those events? So did it happen and the parents are like, don't worry about it. Let's not talk about it. Let's just, move on or whatever. And then this kid is now just living in fear every day. Like, are they going to come back? Are they going to do more things to our house? It says, die. Are they going to kill us? Those kind of things. And if that's never addressed, maybe that can turn into something over time. Yeah. So I think it's more about how we handle the incidents of whether they are major racial incidents or those microaggressions that often can have major impact. How do we handle them? How do we bounce back from them? How do we, respond to society moving forward? That I think is much more of what I see rather than, I had a couple culture clashes due to my mixed race background. Now I'm, confused and I need therapy. It doesn't go that way. No.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of being mixed race, that we might have some superpowers. Do you talk to, and I just use the term superpowers because I think there's something about our experiences, right? Like we've lived, either walking a tightrope or on either side or in and out, code switching. What do you feel are those strengths that you've seen with the individuals you've been working with that you're like, hey, you know what? Because of your experience, X, Y, Z. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of clear strengths that you even see in research. Like one for mixed race kids, it's like cognitive flexibility, just being able to solve a problem from multiple angles because they're exposed to different cultures, different groups of people that kind of do things in a different way. And because they're able to, if you think about the very basic level of a mixed race kid probably learning to interact with one side of the family and talk and joke and whatever this way. And then when they go to this side of the family, they have to interact a different way. They're already switching in their minds, like how to perceive the world, how to, just understand things. So then when it comes to problem solving, they can actually be more creative. They have more, cognitive flexibility in that regard. Another superpower is just knowing how to interact with multiple different groups. Some people think like, the kid is going to be confused if they have this parent from this and this, whatever from this side. It's like, no, they actually are gaining more skills because now they're interacting with more people and with, very like vastly different cultures sometimes. I always mention, when I talk about that piece of it, I always mention former President Obama, because a lot of people say, or, you know, the discussion was a lot of the reason why he did so well across the United States is due to his background, because he grew up with his white grandparents, his Midwestern white grandparents, and he knew very well how to talk to Midwestern, you know, little old white ladies or whatever. He had a skill of like, I know how to talk to the classic white American, but then he learned from very young age, through his own reading, his own interactions in Hawaii, and then working in like Southside Chicago, how to interact with African Americans and how to, you know, sort of code switch and whatever. And that became a skill. That became a superpower for him, because he wasn't, you know, he was just, like I said, able to kind of move in and out of these like cultural ways of being, with a very smooth kind of transition, where other people try to learn it and they do it a lot more clunky. You know, like we've all seen those politicians that try to like use their 2 sentences of Spanish so that they can like get the, you know, Latinx vote, and everybody's like, you don't even seem natural. Like, what is happening? But he didn't have to do that. He's just like, I know how to talk here and I know how to talk here, and it's all, you know, it's all part of me. So, you know, there's a lot of superpowers in that way. We also see maybe more acceptance of other groups. So again, this is a kid that's said, well, I'm exposed to multiple groups, so I don't have a need to sort of ostracize other groups. So maybe I can be open. I'm open to other people's cultures. You know, I want to keep learning. I've seen the contrast in my own family. Why wouldn't I appreciate yours as well? So there's, you know, a lot of pieces like that I think are really great.
Yeah, and a question in reference to, you know, like Obama, you know, he's both, he's mixed, and obviously, you know, the way we appear often takes precedence in the way we identify. Is that how it usually is? Is there something in psychology or you know, how they categorically set that up to say, like, say for instance, for myself, look, no, I'm a white guy, or I'm a white Mexican versus Mexican white, or you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of writing and discussion about the, you know, our phenotype, the way we appear to other people and how that influences identity. I think that by and large, we can see that when a mixed race person is perceived to be mostly or only, you know, one aspect of their identity, that probably does become a salient part of how they see themselves. Because again, that's how the environment treated me. That these is the messages I'm getting over and over and over from everyone. So they may, you know, connect to that, and they may embrace it and say, yeah, that has been my experience. But I just feel it's fair to acknowledge that you can find a lot of mixed race folks that maybe other people don't think they look like, you know, whatever their identity is, but they identify with that as well. So I was just thinking of a recent article I was kind of looking at where it was focused on white other. So a person that has one white parent and one, you know, minority parent. And it does seem that there's just, like I said, a higher preponderance of like those kids identifying to some level with the minority parent, especially when they looked more like the minority group.
Yeah.
So it does play a role. It's not a rule. It's not a, you know, prescription, meaning, oh, well, you look like this, so you should identify that. That's not the case at all. It's just that is what happens quite a bit. But I always encourage mixed race kids, especially if people keep telling them you don't look blah blah blah. I say, well, that doesn't matter. If you feel strongly identified with whatever that group is, you still get to assert it because it's part of your family, it's part of your culture. it just means you might have to deal with more questions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's just learn how to respond to them. But, yeah.
And me being mixed, being Latinx, my dad was born here but grew up in Mexico. My mom is European descent. How would you tell or help someone like me? And I say, I want to make sure I'm identifying as both. What language? I wouldn't say I'm Mexican white, but what language would I use? Because do we just automatically assume that? I guess not automatically assume that the American, if I'm saying Mexican American, that part is the white part of me,
Oh, I see. If you said,
yeah.
Well, I think you could say you're Mexican American, and you could say European American, you can say white American, something like that, where you're making it clear the distinction that there's like these two separate groups. So I think wording and labeling is very fluid, and you get to have a lot of personal choice regarding that. Yeah. I think you could still you could say I'm Mexican and white, and that would still be correct, because at least in the US, you can have a third or fourth generation Mexican American person say I'm Mexican, and no one ever says, "Oh, but were you born there? What's your passport?" We know what they mean. They're talking about this connection to this ethnic group. So, as far as identity and how to connect to it, I think there's probably a very clear set of things that you can connect to for Mexican American. You can think about what state did your dad grow up in? Like, what are the common foods, and what's the, well-known music, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. When it comes to your parent, if they are white American, I always talk to families and sort of tell them to get specific with the region of America that the parent grew up in, because for white American culture, all of America is that, right? We kind of fish in the water. We're living in that culture, but there are very specific nuances depending on where they grew up. So, like, a white person from Tennessee is going to grow up very differently than that white person in Michigan or like San Diego. So getting a little specific with like the nuances of culture, not necessarily whiteness, but American culture regionally, is something that then a child can connect to. I used to give the example of a client I was working with. She had an Asian parent and she had a white American parent. And even, this Asian parent was asking, like, I don't know how to connect them to their like white American side. Is that even possible? And over the time of working with this family, I realized, and this parent realized, oh, wait, there are some things that my child has learned from their other side of the family that I didn't know about, that I've never done, but that they've started to incorporate in the home. And it was a simple example, but it was Christmas cookies. And so there was a common occurrence where this child would go and spend the holidays with the white American side of the family and all these things. And one year they weren't able to go. But they came to mom and they were like, "Can we make Christmas cookies?" And mom was like, "What is this?" And she was like, "You got to do this and you do that." And like they had a whole day where it was just like a big thing, and you pack them up and give them to people. And she realized, oh, this is something my child did literally every year. I had no idea. I would not have ever known how to teach her to do that. But she's so connected to it, she wanted to bring it in the year that she wasn't able to, go and be with that family. So I'm like, that's culture, because you might find Christmas cookies in the grocery store now. That doesn't mean that it's not still a specific, maybe a white American thing. I didn't grow up making Christmas cookies, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I like that. And I think, just, finding you and the work you're doing, the content you're creating, and even just that little piece of conversation has already raised my awareness to the idea of like, sometimes people ask like, oh, they say Americans don't have a culture, but you just dispelled that myth. And I think that's important that we it's another opportunity for us to, I wouldn't say share differences, but to share those nuances where, give us this unique experience growing up. So thank you. That just raised my awareness right there. So
yeah, I mean, I try to do that a lot because I think it's actually a very big problem that the dominant culture thinks they have no culture. And then what happens is they other everyone else. They're like, oh, you're so different. You're so different. Different from what? From what you're already doing. So you can look at your own thing and be like, oh, okay. The secret is if you can get that group of people to really look at their own culture and their own identity and appreciate, oh, this is what my group did. We eat this and we do things this way. They will also build up their, like a positive, like they'll build up a sense of identity in that regard, which would make them less likely to other people. They would be able to, oh, you eat this, we eat this. Oh, you listen to that, we do this. But what happens is, oh, you do that, I don't do anything. That's weird. Like they don't realize that they have their own to compare it to. So it is. Yeah,
that's fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of work in psychology where people, there are a lot of writings on like white racial identity development, the idea of like really connecting to yourself and what it means to be, especially in America, and how important that is to teach a child, and help them.
Yeah. I know we're coming down to time. I'm going to clump this last two questions together, and they have to do with what do you think is important for institutions like our schools, healthcare, mental health professionals to do to work with, support, nurture this group of individuals such as ourselves that is, I think, 30 million plus percent, not 30 million plus percent, but 30 million individuals and growing, part of the United States demographic,
I was saying one of the easiest places to start is with forms. There's been a lot of groups that have been asking for a simple form to be updated. I think that would be a great place to start. If every school allowed for like a check more than one box option, if the doctor's offices, encourage that, if all the places where you have to fill out, this race question or this ethnicity question, allowing a check more than one option, it makes a big difference for a child because so many, and that's very focused on America because there are other countries that already do the check more than one box. Like I think the UK is already like, oh, we already do that. But of course, America's like, no, we're still on, 5 boxes and choose only one. It's not universal enough. I think there are a good amount of states and there are certain schools that try to be aware of that. But if we could blanket it across the whole country where everybody has the option to check off more than one box, that is very empowering for a child to sort of be like, I know how to fill this question out. Because there are so many mixed race folks, no matter what age, whether they're like 7 years old or 47, they have that moment of seeing that form and being like, what should I, oh man, it says check only one. What do I do? Should I check other? I don't like that box. Do they have a fill in the blank? No, there's no fill in the blank option. Well, now what do I do? It's like nobody should have to have a 3-minute moment in their mind to fill out this form when it's easily fixed, so I would say it's a great place to start.
And I'm sure I've gotten angry and just checked something just to be like, I'm going to show them. I'm just going to check something random. Let's throw off their survey, right?
I'm sure, yes. I know people that are just like, well, I'm just going to check everything. And,
Right on. Dr. Jenn, your 1 minute recipe for world peace.
Maybe if we love ourselves first, then we'll be able to love everyone else all around us.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so where can people find you? And share that and go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm Dr. Jenn Psych on a lot of the social media. So that's DrJennNPSYCH. So Instagram is where I hang out a lot. I have Dr. Jenn Psych on TikTok. I don't really use Twitter, but it's there. All of the Facebook, YouTube, all of those places. But my website is Free to Be. That is the name of my, company, Free to Be Collective. So they can find me there at freetobecollective.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for fitting me into your schedule and sharing just a wealth of knowledge in a short amount of time. And we'll definitely share your bio along with any links on the website and throughout social media on and off, because I think you have so much awesome information and experience. Everybody go check her out. It's very, very engaging information, and you present it in such a fun, educational way. So thank you so much, Dr. Jenn.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for the Multiracial Verse podcast. My name is Antonio Fernandez. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.